Did you know, did you know, did you know, did you know, did you know that guys walk here? Did you know guys walk here?
All right, y'all. Welcome to On Deck. I think I have a slight delay here, so y'all got to bear with me. All right, we have a really interesting conversation lined up. And matter of fact, I'm not going to make her moderate, but I'm going to have her explain the topic. What are we talking about, Minnie?
So today we're going to talk about race as a social construct and the differences between race, ethnicity, and nationality. And I wanted to talk about that because I think terms are used interchangeably and are not synonymous, or maybe they are. And I think that it surprises me how many people don't want to identify as Black. For various reasons, and it is interesting because what is Black? What makes a person Black? And after looking into what race really is, I'm actually surprised about my own stance on it personally. Actually, after looking into it, so yeah, that's what we're gonna talk about. Race as a social construct and differences between race, nationality, and ethnicity. How'd I do?
You did good. Hold up. I have a lot of kids in the background. So when you said race as a construct, break that down for us.
Okay, that's something else I had to do too, because I hear a lot of people talk about race as a social construct, and race is always something I prided myself on, so I always disregarded it like, whatever. But looking into it, it basically means it's a societal standard, kind of like gender norms, like, you know, women should do that. Those are societal constructs. They're made up by people. There's really no necessarily scientific relevance to it or evidence to support such a thing. So it's a social construct. And my position as far as race being a social construct is it absolutely is a social construct, but a lot of things are social constructs. Currency and money is a social construct. Even the idea of belonging to a nation, to me, can be seen or argued that it's a social construct, because ain't no lines of demarcation between one land or another. That's something that men decided. So yeah, it's a made up shit.
Okay. So with that, we're gonna open it up. Hanif, Rob, is race important? Is it just a construct that someone created to cause further division, to exploit other people? Let's talk about that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, for me personally, I think, I tend to agree, because if you look at the history of racism and racial classification, there's a lot of different ways that this happened. There is someone trying to make a scientific explanation for it. There's people trying to make religious explanations for it. I think one of the ones, when I was looking into this, that I found really interesting was a scientist based out of Philadelphia in the 19th century named Samuel Morton. This guy said that, he collected skulls, and he didn't really care where he got them from. And in the idea of collecting skulls, he came up with this idea based off of the skulls he collected and research he did on the skulls, that there are 5 distinct races. And the smartest race, based off of his theory, is the white race. The dumbest race, based off of his theory, is the Black race, which at that time he categorized all Black people as Ethiopians. And in between, you had Asians and you had some other people, Native Americans, in between this. But this was something that, when he came out with this theory, became a justification, another justification used in the South to justify continuing slavery by saying, well, look, I mean, these people that we own, they're not smart anyway. So all of the things I've seen, no matter which way you look at it, when it comes down to race, it was all used as a tool to try to justify one as being the most superior, to keep everyone else in line, in check, and so that one can benefit, in this case, the white race, over the other. But there is no scientific, historic, religious, or any evidence that can really say that beyond the human race, that there are racial classifications, and as many has been alluding to, a lot of it gets confused between ethnicity and racial classification, because that's really what we see when we start talking about people from different countries. We're talking about ethnic classifications, and depending on the country, those ethnic classifications go even deeper than we generalize them today.
You know, that's a good point, and to kind of further ballast what Hanif was saying, is it's important to note that there's absolutely no science at all whatsoever around these categories and how these categories are defined. Dr. Joy DeGray kind of breaks that down very eloquently and very comprehensively. You know, this is some guy, some European dude who proclaims himself a scientist, comes up with these categories, and then he assigns a certain profile on these categories. Like the Asian category, for example, was those people were governed by avarice. The Black people were governed by, I think he named it, I think it's Linnaeus was the scientist's name, his last name, Linnaeus. Africans or Black folks were categorized, Afro something, were categorized as lazy and promiscuous. And a lot of that was written and espoused just to validate slavery. These people are born and bred to be enslaved. They need our guidance, et cetera, et cetera. So, a lot of it was a strategy to kind of push forward an agenda that they were doing. But when you talk about race, and correct me if I'm wrong, Hanif, Minnie, or Dal, you all might know this better than I do, but I think in the United States here, that whole racial construct was started during the census, when the census was created. People weren't necessarily labeled with all these different labels until the census, as far as in this country.
No, before the census.
It was before the census?
It was, I would say, the 1600s. Bacon's Rebellion, I believe, would be like the first start of classification of people outside of or within race, and creating race as a social construct.
Yeah, so it's a stratagem used to continue to create division. I characterize myself as Black. And when you hear people talking, they have all these other ethnicities thrown around and thrown in there, and nationalities thrown in there, and like Black is usually the last one. There was a quote that I heard Tariq say a while back when he was talking about the fact there is no Black and brown coalition. And he says, the best parts of some of the people who claim other nationalities or ethnicities, the best features and parts that they get is on the African side, not on the European side, or some of the more pronounced features that accentuate their beauty or their looks or their knowledge, etc.
But even in that, like when you look at the idea of Black versus white, it was even the idea of assigning the color to races, for lack of better words, it was meant to denote good versus evil, superior versus inferior, because if it was Black, it was considered, evil, black magic, a black mark, all these things were considered things that were not, positive or pro, versus, white being considered, pure as the driven snow, being described as light, being described as something that's good, something to be aspired to. So, I've talked to a bunch of people that I've met through the years that come from the various countries on the African continent. And every single one of them have said, we never really say, we're Black, not because we're not Black, but that's a color assigned to describe people in a particular way, when that color in and of itself doesn't define me. Yet here in the States, one of the reasons why I think it's important for people in the States to be able to say that they're Black is because there's been such a stigma put on being Black. There's been such a negative thing being associated with being Black in this country, yet so many things that we enjoy to this day from this country came out of these people that are supposed to have been stupid, unintelligent, that were slaves, that were pieces of property that were regarded as, not even a whole person at some point in this history. So it's very interesting. The more and more that you dig into this, you see that even when it comes to being white, back in when we talk about slave times, not everyone that was white that we consider white today was considered white back then. To be white back then, you had to be rich. You weren't even considered white if you didn't have money or property back then in this country. I mean, and then you can go back to Europe and go to the whole construct in Europe and how that was dealt with, and it's very interesting the more and more that you look at this, and no matter what scientific explanation people have tried to say through the years to justify races, you can't find one. The only scientific explanation you can find to talk about race in general is the human race, not, a group of ethnicities or people from any specific country or part of the world.
I know I came in late. I don't know if they posed a question, D, or not, but when I think we understand race as in today, we don't understand it was, I believe, in product of the classism that was happening, because you have indentured servitude that happened for white people. Indians that were in America, not Native Americans, but what they would call people from actual India. People don't understand that, and that's not in our history books at all. But people from India that were also involved in that slave trade and mixed within the slave corridors. And when we come down to it, it was classism. You know what I mean? You see the first depiction of white and black after like 1650 and on. You know what I mean? We hear about one of the pivotal moments when race actually became a construct was the Bacon's Rebellion, as a result of a white man not feeling like he was a part of the elite class of white people. And therefore, he banned altogether the lower class people, not by race, right? He got the Native Americans, he got the indentured servants, and he got the black and brown slaves to come together and fight against the elite British. So when the British saw that, now we have, okay, there's too many poors and not enough rich, which just happened to them all the time in their own history. And so classism happens in England. Racism happens in America. India is classism. Tribalism is in some parts of Africa. So these are ways to divide that everybody know that's the best way to keep your power. So in order for us to understand that, we have to go back and understand that it was a product for financial gain to make sure that there was division within races and creating races for division.
I think one of the things too that you got to keep in mind that as people are listening to this is that this is something that's been going on for centuries. This has kind of been cooking and cultivating for centuries when you talk about that division. And when you talk about when white folks first came over here, I think that what the WASPs, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, Irish folks and Italian folks and everybody else weren't really considered or classified white at that time, except for, when you look at the whole classism and getting those numbers up. Okay, we have the same complexion, same skin tone. Okay, we're going to include you with us because we need to get our numbers up.
Yeah, I mean, you can even go further than that, and you can look at the Irish when the Irish first came to this country. When the Irish first came to this country, the people that they spent a lot of their time with, most of their time with, falling in love with, building communities with, were those that were called the Black people in this country. And they weren't regarded as being white. But you look at what happens when the status changed, and I think, the issue when it comes down to race and racism as it is today, we understand racism. I think some people don't even have the correct understanding of racism as a whole, too. And that in and of itself is what causes a problem. Like the whole argument of, Black Lives Matter people are racist. Black lives aren't the only ones that matter. No, you don't understand the sentiment behind that statement. And that's the reason why you're going to say something ignorant like that. And it's the same thing with racism. At least from my perspective, understanding what race is and what race isn't, there's a very big difference between being racist, being prejudiced, and being bigoted. One of those three requires that you have power over a system that can control, enforce, and keep things to a status quo that you want. And if you don't have control of said system or any of those said mechanisms, it's kind of hard for you to say that you're a part of a racist system when you don't have any control over said system, which is, and from my perspective, racism is more about a system than it is about, oh, white people are better, black people are inferior. But that's, I guess, maybe part of the conversation, maybe not.
All depends on how you. Oh man, I'm getting feedback. When we look at the construct of race, are we basing it strictly on how white people perceive us, or are we looking at it from how black people, whatever you choose to call them, will perceive or identify themselves? So I guess that would be the question. Before we get into the racism, how do we self-identify would probably be the biggest issue on the table.
Yeah.
What I found interesting is that that's how most like racial systems you self-identify. Like it's no questionnaire about your behavior or your lineage or anything like that. You tell people what you are. And I think to take a look at something that's biological, the shape of a skull or something like that, and turn it into a predictor or a qualitative attribute is mind-boggling to me. So for you to say that if your skull is this size, you must be stupid, or you're more intelligent, or that you're inherently lazy or inherently subservient, it's just crazy how someone could take those dots and connections and people buy into it is just mind-boggling. And I can't think of another reason to classify people by the way that they look and behave, if not to try to establish superiority. And when you ask, are we looking at race through, from a white people's perspective, it's their creation. And I can see going back into antiquity why they would have to create such a thing. Because there was a time when, we were the progenitors of everything. Education and science and mathematics and all those things. If you wanted to know something, you want to understand or learn something, you went to Ethiopians, like you went to a board, right? We created these systems, although they were not perverse in their inception, it turned into that. So when people say, is race a social construct, and while I agree, it doesn't make it irrelevant. Whether it's a social construct or not, it's still relevant. It still matters. It never had to, but where we are now, it absolutely matters. And I also wanted to, somebody had said something, the fact that people who are considered white or Caucasian now weren't necessarily always considered white. These classifications change. And for them to be, so concretely, and they change rather frequently.
Yeah, we were the original white people.
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, that just in my studies, I'm coming kind of late, so I don't want to.
No, give me spotlight, D.I. to hear this. This is why I came.
I need to hear Mark. I need you to hear when you say we are the original white people. Explain that for me, because I've never heard that before. So explain that to me.
White is in a legal term. So white would be the people that, the free people, the people that are free at law, not civilly mortuus, which black at law means civilly mortuus, dead at law. So you don't have any rights. So I took a little notes. I brought a couple little notes. I didn't bring too many, but because I didn't know how much time I would have. So, but I knew that the time that I had was precious, and I wanted to share the information with everybody. So I did bring a couple of notes to read from.
Sure.
So basically what I got was just to kind of sum it up a little bit. I don't know, everybody's coming into it at a different point, and I would not invalidate anyone's anything that they've already added. This is again just my conjecture through my research. So everybody can go, I could give you some books to read after this, a book list, and we could kind of get more into it if you want off camera, but I don't want to eat up all the time because it's not about me or nothing. It's just about everybody just coming to it. But through the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, we the people that were here actually, So that would be our ancestors were annexed to the United States Corporation. You know, America is something that we had, being the copper tone people that were already the original inhabitants of the landmass. You know what I'm saying? But United States of America is something that was enacted at a certain date. You see what I'm saying? So through the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, you know, the Negro, Black, and colored thing happened, which gave the people that were already here and throughout the land masses in general, it started to kind of classify them, classify us, you know what I mean, due to those terms, Negro, Black, and colored. Now you can go back into the American Heritage Dictionary, you can go to any dictionary around the time of slavery, quote unquote slavery, and get these definitions that I'm gonna give you. Black actually means ashen or pale. A definition for black would be ashen or pale back in these times that we're talking about, because definitions change as well. So when I'm giving these definitions, I'm giving them to them from a American Heritage, but you can get any dictionary, look up a dictionary from that time is basically what I'm saying, not a dictionary now. You know what I mean? So the I'll keep going. That what that did was, through the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, it created a perpetual society where quote unquote white people, which was calling white people for the term, because what we know them as, to remake what we were. That was when they were able to decide what we were, and how they were able to do that was through the Bureau of Land Management. Okay, so what the Bureau of Land Management did at the time was enacted the U.S. Census Bureau. Okay, so the Census Bureau, when the Census Bureau was established, what that did was to start to reclassify the full-blooded nationals that were you know, are in the international part of the international empire, and they started to classify them according to their tribal affiliations and where they lived at. You see what I'm saying? So now that would be essentially the people that were I'm not going to go too far off, but if everything was together, if all the continents was together at one point, well, you know, in science, I think they call that Pangea or Pangea or something like that, right? So all the continents are together. So you as the brown man are here already in all these continents, but we're gonna just give it to you quick. So if everything's together, America, where we're at now, will be Northwest Africa. You know, so that's why in Moorish culture we call this the Northwest of Mexum, because this is Northwest Africa. That's why you have a lot of things that are found in Africa, supposedly in Africa, that were placed in Africa to throw off the story, but you find them here in America. Like a lot of different mounds, which are not called pyramids, because mounds are earlier than pyramids. They predate pyramids. Mounds would be a pyramid without a capstone. So in the pyramids of Giza, those are pyramids that have capstones. The ones over here don't have capstones, but they're still the same. Essentially, you have different builders of mounds and pyramids. Mounds are earlier pyramids. You found the oldest ones here. You see what I'm saying? You can find different artifacts. I think you could just pull up a Google search right now. They just found a bunch of artifacts that are quote unquote Egyptian in the Grand Canyon. You know, there's also a temple in the Grand Canyon. So we basically we were of this landmass already, but I'm gonna keep on going. There's so much to catch up with. So once the Moorish nationality was somewhat marginalized, they created a Negro nationality and absorbed all the descendants of the mound builders and the Moors, part of the Al Maghrib Al Aqsam, the castle builders in the Grand Canyon, and so they absorbed that into that Negro nationality through the census. All right, so I'm gonna keep going. So they literally created schools called reform schools. It was more Indian schools around the 1700s. These got set up, and the plan for long-range denationality of the people of an imperial dynasty is they have to be bred out, if you can understand that. So we had to get bred out. We essentially were here around what were known as Indians on this landmass were actually nations. Which, so when you have classifications of Chickasaw and different Indian, quote unquote Indian nationalities, those are actually Moors, but you know, it's all different types of Moors because you have shifts within the kingdom. You see what I'm saying? So even when we go into what we're dealing specifically with quote unquote race right now, but it's more so to deal with bloodline and ancestry. You see what I'm saying? So you could be the descendant of a king right now. You wouldn't know it because your blood. You. When we're saying that we married into their family, they actually married into our family. The original aristocracy of Europa was brown. They have Old York and the New York. The Old York was us, the old Moorish blood. You see what I'm saying? it's such deep of a story, but I'm gonna keep on going with my notes because I don't want to get too far off.
Yeah, a couple more minutes and we're gonna jump in. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Nah, don't
So
apologize.
we can basically we could trace our way back to the beginnings of all these cultures, religions, customs, ideology, and what makes us who we is because we keep ourselves and do what we did. So we're not Muslim, we're actually Muslim. It wouldn't be it wouldn't be Muslim. And so that's what the Moors symbolize. The red fez is it could be dated back to the story of Daniel. So when Daniel was being fought by the pagans, they was basically he had a white on because he originally wore the white fez, symbolized peace, and they killed him when he slid down on his sword. His fez was covered with blood, so that's how the fez became red. You see what I'm saying? But essentially we've been separated from our history. The Rockefellers, I think it was Rockefellers that started the public school curriculum. And previous to that, like I said, through these schools, Moorish history had already been taken out. So people are disassociated with it. And when we're saying that we're Christian in different aspects, we're fighting the different aspects of Roman Inquisition. You see what I'm saying? So it's always as it has been. The same enemy we have now is the same enemy we always have. It's just we're fighting each other because we're waking up to what we are. You know what I mean? And people even like as far down as Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson realized this too. You know, I'm not a conspiracist. I'm just saying he had realized what I'm telling you. A lot of people realize what I'm telling you. They wake up to themselves as far as knowing that you're not a slave. You may have been at some point in your story. If you want to accept that, that's cool. Maybe you were. I'm saying I wasn't. You know what I mean? And many of us were not, but we don't know who or what we are, but we're waking up to that now is what I'm saying. So a lot of people say, yeah, I came from Florida and my family, we had Indian in our family, but how did you get Indian in your family if you came off a boat from Africa? At what point did they mingle? Did they mingle together? Because what you would say the Indians are the Moorish nations that were here previous to that. And actually what it was Abraham, that's why you have so many brown people on all the money back then in all these houses, because they came over here to learn government from you. They came over here to learn government from you. George Washington and all them outfits they got on, those are outfits of a peasant. Those are outfits of someone that is a servant. George Washington studied law from you. They studied all these things from the Moorish people that was already here, is what I'm trying to say. So that part of it is a deception, you know. So, and a lot of brown people are paid off to continue this deception. So I'm not saying everybody is an agent. I'm saying a lot of people know what I'm telling you, and they don't tell it to you for whatever reason it is. You know what I mean? But we that's all I got for right now.
And I think based on your research, everybody probably has come to different conclusions. But let's see, Minnie, you're next. Go for it.
I've been studying. I'm familiar with what Mark was saying, so I was able to follow. But I know that to people who are unfamiliar, that sounded crazy. But it's such a deep rabbit hole. And before he interjected, I was gonna say, like, you know, we are the indigenous people everywhere. You know, melanated people. And when we talk about race from, you know, a white perspective, it's a white construct. And as I was saying, the only reason to group people, try to classify people by phenotype or the way they look and the way they behave is to establish superiority. They had to go hard to erase the memory of who we were from our records, from our genes, from our memory, because they basically had to devise the most powerful propaganda campaign to bring about the paradigm shift that was needed or proportionate to changing that narrative of who we were from that of gods to slaves. That was no easy task. And the amount of atrocities and stuff that we suffered had to be proportionate to the extent to which we had to fall. You know what I'm saying? So from being up here to being down there, and to make us so that we are upside down, inside out, and backwards. You know what I'm saying? We worry about race and what we call ourselves, but really, like he said, it's the bloodline, it's the genes. And just because we might not have the science to understand how the way someone looks, talks, how they eat, the way their jawbone is shaped can manifest itself into behavior or enlightenment, that doesn't mean that the science is not there. You know, I find it quite intuitively pleasing that the melanin makes a difference. The melanin matters. You know what I'm saying? I feel like there's righteousness in that divine communication system that keeps us connected to oneness. And if you don't have that, I find it quite intuitively pleasing that it affects your behavior, it affects your moral compass. But there's no side. That's more metaphysical than anything. And we're the indigenous people everywhere. Like Mark said, the deeper you go, you know what I'm saying, the darker history gets. Everything that we so willingly gave to them and flipped it inside out and backwards and weaponized it to make us forget who we are. But they know. They know. And a lot of us come across that information. And a lot of us try to disperse that information or to walk in that truth. And you see what happens when we do that. So it matters. It absolutely matters. Just like nationality, like I said, it could be seen as a social construct. Because if you go back further in time, we was all together. There was no separation by large bodies of water. We was all together. We are the indigenous people everywhere. And that's why I'm probably being black.
So Minnie, let me ask you a question. In terms of moving forward, people will always have this inner yearning to self-identify as something. I understand it from a historical perspective. You're right. If anyone who's read George James' Stolen Legacy, it breaks all that down. You start reading about Dr. Ben and all those folks, you get it. Couple of things. Mark talked about the Moors. The Moors are from the northern tip of Africa. We still have the folks from Middle Africa, South Africa that predate the Moors by centuries. So I'm just saying, we can spring off to so many different sectors of the continent and of the planet. How do we self-identify now? It brings us to 2020. We could talk about the Moors. We could talk about Ghanaians, different, the Bantu tribe, which predate just about everybody. And it's kind of like, how far back do we go to determine who we identify as an ethnic group here in the States? And let me just say this before you speak, Mark. Most people tend to talk about it. We look at the English language and we base a lot of who we are, what we say about ourselves on the English language, which is the newest, most bastardized language on the planet. So I can't define myself using the English language. I can't look at the United States of America because this is a bastardized, stolen country. Some of us was here. Some of us came on the bottom of slave ships. It's real. So now I'm gonna put you on in a second, Mark. I can't hear you. I just want to throw it out there. So take all these variables, throw them into a pot. What am I now?
Can I answer?
Go ahead.
Because we can go into Moorish and all that, Egyptology and Pan-Africanism is great, right?
No, it's not.
No, wait, Mark.
Justin, hold on. Mark, I'm gonna let him finish, then you can respond.
I'm sorry.
The reason why I say that, because when you talk about one person or one ethnicity of people, and you are not, and people don't pay credence, and DM and me have been at an event where Israelites like myself came in and was like, nah, y'all don't understand this. But when you talk to somebody from Africa, right, and they have a grandmother that's 120 years old and never heard anything about no Moorish anything, and I'm not trying to get at you, not trying to get at anything. It that matters. Yes, that matters. But what Dee's trying to say is how do we identify ourselves now? Race isn't the issue. We already know that. We're not stupid. Everybody in this thing already know what race is.
Well, you got to identify what
give me a second. I got you. I got you, Mark. I got you, bro. I got you.
No, not Moorish. Not Moorish.
I'm not saying. I'm just. Let me finish.
Hold on. Yeah, everybody. One at a time. Because otherwise it starts the conflict and people watching can't.
And I might say something you're going to agree with. So.
Just hold on. We're trying to educate people, and we can't educate people if we're all talking at the same time. So everybody has valuable information, one at a time. Patience. Justin, finish your thought.
So I'm not going to go into Hebrew Israelites and everything like that. I'm going to talk about the fact that ethnicity does matter to some people. And when you talk about understanding your lineage, it has to do with what you eat. You know what I mean? It's in your DNA. There's coding systems. So we talk about the science of it. The reason why our noses are broader is because we can absorb more oxygen. They have a lot of hairs in their nose because they live in colder climates, and that stopped the cold air from getting to their lungs and causing different inflammatory problems. So the science is there. Right, the ethnicity matters is because we need to know. It helps us identify because it was taken from us. And when you know where you're from, you can know how to eat, you can know how to speak, you can take away the language. And then also there's a metaphysical aspect that you were just talking about. There's something that's gonna, a yearning, a desire that maybe just be faith-based and spiritual-based, but then you'll be able to feel exactly what you've been lacking for the last 20, 40, 50 years, however old you are. So it matters on a spiritual level, a scientific level, and it matters on also a communal level as well. Being able to commune with people that believe in what you believe and be able to move forward with those same group of people.
Okay. Thanks, Justin. Go ahead, Mark. You up?
I agree. Yeah, no. I wouldn't say you don't have to. It's not about being a Moor. I'm just saying that you were many things. You're all those things. So you could just pick something that you was before Rome came and said, this is what you are. Because all of this is Roman Inquisition. A lot of what you're dealing with is still Rome. So Rome has everything's going to lead back to Rome as all of this keeps unraveling and all this political satire, the theater of it kind of unravels and all of these things kind of lead back. All roads will eventually lead back to the Vatican and Rome. But that's essentially what you're dealing with, is that all you would have to do is just claim any part of what you were. You see what I'm saying? But when I say your Moorish ancestry, you have records. You have everything that's on record has to do with what you signed as a Moor. You see what I'm saying? So any right you have entitled is because you contracted them to be here. When they came here, we're the ones that signed the contract for them to be here and doing what they're doing. So capitalism and democracy, all these things are some things they brought in. So all you have to do is return to what you were. You don't have to be anything new. But everybody want to be something new. All you got to do is just return to what you is. You're the landlord.
Right.
They essentially means landlord. So all you got to do is just return to what you are. I'm not saying return to being a Moor. I'm just saying return to what you know and what you were doing when you already had it. You had the rock already, and you dropped it to yourself. You didn't drop it to him. So what I'm saying is the idea of slavery that's presented through the mass media is one of black magic. And now that might be far-fetched to someone that's mundane and doesn't have any understanding of what I'm saying, because magic is a stigmatized word. But what I'm saying is the vibrational energy of when you're telling someone that they are a slave, and the pictures and the symbols. Because how do you brainwash somebody? This is known through MK Ultra experimentation. You could declassify FBI, CIA files on all this stuff. I'm not just making this stuff up. Like, I be reading this stuff. I've been reading this for 20 years. I've been on this. You know what I mean? So you know how to brainwash somebody. They know what television does. And the 3 easiest ways to brainwash somebody is through symbolism, trauma, repetition. The story they give you about slavery, a transatlantic slave trade, is one of these 3 things. And that's how they ingrain these things into you. That's how they ingrain this into you, like they said, on the metaphysical level, that will change so that you don't ever aspire. A lot of people don't even think, a lot of people are coming to what we're talking about now to have these conversations only because it's so real for us now. You see what I'm saying? But this is something that's always been going on. The deception has always been there. These people swear by oath to deception. So even the people that
Can I ask
look
you a
like
question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. I didn't hear you.
No, I just had a question. I know you was on a roll, so I got to ask questions.
No, I'm sorry.
So the three points that you mentioned are actually, in terms of brainwashing people, are on spot on. But I do have a question. So are you implying that slavery didn't happen?
No, it happened. Yes.
Okay.
The version that we're interpreting and our place in the story historically accurately as far as the context and what actually happened is where the divide is. Because every year at a certain time they're going to hit you with some slavery movies. Hollywood is a part of everything that's divisive about this system. All of these components work together as far as the Vatican, the religion, the entertainment. All these things work together because what you would know as the devil and your enemy, he has many different heads on the snake. This snake
I get that.
10 different heads.
And I get that. So here's the thing. What I learned actually came from my dad, who was the grandson of a slave. So some of the stories that they shared, some of the stories, I'm a 60s baby.
Yep.
Some of y'all wasn't around. So some of the stories they shared about life prior to, I don't know, Emancipation Proclamation, whatever that is. Okay.
Yeah.
Some of the stories they shared are consistent with some of the things that I've read.
Yeah, I'm
You dig where I'm coming from?
Florida. I'm from Florida. I'm 12th generation Floridian. You know what I mean? So
Okay.
like my family, I'm from the deep south. Like I do my story. Like I know that's what I'm saying. I don't
No,
think I don't think
I'm not
it's
debating you.
no,
Be
no.
clear. Be clear.
I'm just
Yeah,
saying as far as speaking, I'm just speaking on my how I
your
came to like
experiences.
get on this path. You know what I'm saying? And
Okay.
so a lot of my family told I get all the slavery things. I get my mom got spit on during segregation at school. My mom was one of the people that was on the buses. My like all I know like all of that. I get all that. I'm
Right.
just saying as far as before that, the story has been
Okay.
twisted because all of these buildings that they quote unquote build during the gold rush, there wasn't no manpower to build these buildings. Every couple of millennia, there's a cataclysm on Earth. We've been on Earth, and these people that we dealing with been on Earth. But every few millennia, there's a cataclysm. After that cataclysm, there's a reconstruction, and during this reconstruction is the points when we lose the history. So y'all can say I'm wrong, right? It don't matter. I'm just here to tell you
Nobody,
what comes
bruh,
through.
bruh,
You know what I'm saying?
bruh. The point of
That's
this
all.
show, the point of this show is to share information.
Oh, okay.
So, all right. So I need
No,
you. I need you to
I'm
be
not
clear.
getting at nobody.
No.
I'm just trying to come with it. I'm just trying to come
But
with
you
it.
taking it. But you're taking a defensive stance, and I'm like,
No. I'm
we're
just
gonna.
saying the time
I'm
is
gonna
short.
ask questions.
I
I'm
didn't
gonna
want to
ask
talk to you.
questions.
I'm
I'm
sorry.
gonna ask questions because
Yeah,
I want
everybody
you
can
to
ask questions. Please
right.
ask questions. I got books. I got stuff. It's just usually when you come with something that's so far from what people, because the dissonance is so crazy. So it's like I could give you 50 books, you know, and people
Right.
will be like, "Yo, you crazy?" I don't know.
But dig, same way you study, we've all studied. So I want to give everybody an opportunity to share the information that they have. You dig where I'm coming from?
100%.
All right. So we're not saying you're wrong because I agree with a number of points. Some points I question, which means I need to go back research it before I challenge it. That's all to it.
Yeah,
You dig?
no. Please
So
do.
I got you.
I don't want nobody to take me as no, you know what I mean, literal, you know, like
Nah, bruh, you ain't the first one.
more. Like, nah, ain't nothing like that, bro.
You're
Nothing
not.
like that.
You're not the first brother. You are not the first brother that I've run into who espouse these views. You're far from the first.
No,
I've been dealing with this. I've been, interacting with brothers like that since I was about 20, about 40 years ago.
That's a fact.
So been there, done that, had that debate. Right now, I got to get my people on track. In order for us to get up out of this shit that we're in right now, we have to move forward.
Right.
So the thing is, how do we take this information? How do we take all this information and create a practical application so we can continue to move forward? That's all. That's
the application of the information. I feel like the biggest part of it is mentally and spiritually to understand that you have something that you can do that doesn't have anything to your dependence on what you would it's like unplugging, right? Like a lot of us we plugged in to such a point that there's no outside form mechanism for us to exist. We haven't built any type of
if that was the case,
whereas we can consolidate because the unity's not there, right?
Brother,
so I'm saying,
brother, if that was the case, these conversations would not be happening.
No. I did.
No. Let me finish. Let me finish. You can't talk and speak at the same time. Let me finish. If that was the case, we wouldn't be having these conversations all over the globe. Black folks from Brazil to the UK are having these same conversations. So people are trying to figure out how to unplug. Yes. If we simply tell them without clarifying, just throw information at them without clarifying, they won't accept it. Our job is to figure out a way for people to accept the information. That's all. Go for it. I'll let you finish.
That right there is the pill to swallow. Then that's like, I mean, but the last show we had, I said a lot of quote unquote black people gonna have a long night. I don't know if you remember that. The last show I was on, I said black people gonna have a long night to realize they're not black. You know what I'm saying? So that you represent the blackness. So all of this is us to come into realizing what we is. I'm saying this is what I feel like we is. You saying you feel like that's what we is. If those things can't gel, then we still not gonna have no unity. The only people that's gonna be able to unify is people that's not unifying on the principles.
But Mark, can I interject for a quick second? You know, there's a lot of knowledge being dropped right now, but we got to figure out a way to synthesize that down into digestible bites. So, or layman's terms, for the average or regular person who's not going to read 50 books.
That's
people aren't reading.
That's a problem.
People read headlines and all of a sudden they think they're an expert on something. You've done the research and you're passionate about what you believe based on the research, no one can question your blackness. No one can make you pivot off that blackness. You're not using terms like minority or people of color. You're not saying that stuff. But how do we synthesize that down so the average black person in the community can be like, oh, okay, all right, I see what they're saying, because the message has to resonate with a lot of people. If it's too erudite, too educated, too strong, you're going to lose a lot of people. I mean, we're fighting against the 24/7.
But that's I agree. I agree with you. I 100% agree with that. Yeah. I don't feel like it's I can't condense it though. You know what I'm saying? I'm not the condenser, because a lot of people ain't gonna make it. That's why I was saying I can't save everybody. It's for the people that's tuned to the frequency of what's coming out. Not for me.
All right, time out, Mark. This ain't all right. This is a show where this conversation is going to include everybody.
No. I meant to save them.
No, I had somebody else up to speak. You just got to chill, brother. You just can't dominate the conversation. We're all talking.
Okay.
We've all educated ourselves, so we can all get on our soapbox and go off. That's not the point of the show. This show was to make sure we disseminate information so cats can get it.
Okay.
If Nate Robinson had your energy, Mark, he wouldn't have been knocked out last night. But go ahead. I know Hanif had his hand up.
Go ahead and you finish up. Go ahead. I mean, we'll start up.
You know, here's the thing though. There's two separate things we have to talk about. We're talking about, you know, all this information that's being dropped down. There's a difference between, like, I could read 500 books and not understand a thing that was in any of them. You know, reading and understanding is two different things. So I think one of the things that correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the things that you're getting at is, okay, we've got all this information out there. How do we get this information to people in a way that they can understand? Because all of us on this panel can grab the same book today. We could read this book and be done with it tonight and have a conversation tomorrow and see 6 different things from the same passages, because we all have different viewpoints. We all have different backgrounds. We all, you know, have all these different things that kind of color where and how we see certain things. So when it comes down to it, it comes down to whatever the knowledge that's being put out there, people have to be able to digest and understand that. And there are some people that they just don't have the ability to do that at this time. And for the case of other people, they don't know how to comprehend what's being brought down. That is the reason why, whether you want to look at it from a formal perspective or whether you want to look at it from a traditional perspective, that is the reason why education, and let's remove the idea of school when we say education, is important. Because educators take this kind of information and they boil it down in ways that people can understand. If you're a parent, you're an educator. If you're an uncle or an aunt, you are an educator. If you're mentoring people, you are an educator. Let's not even think about it from the sense of the occupation. So it's, how do we take knowledge that's being put out here that some people will not comprehend if they read the same 50 books that you do, and make it so that they understand what's being said, why it's important, and what they can do with it. And I think that's the biggest, you know, struggle when it comes down to making sure that we have a sense of unity when it comes to these topics, is making sure that this message gets passed down and that this information gets passed out in a way that everyone can understand and, for that matter, verify. Because I don't know about anyone else on this panel, but a lot of people can be very slick with their tongue and say a lot of things and sound very pseudo-intellectual, but if you go out to try to verify what they're saying, you see that they're really full of shit. They're not really speak. They may sound smart and educated, but what they're saying has no substance whatsoever. So it's not just enough that we get the information packages so people understand it, but we show them how they themselves can go out and verify the information for themselves. So there's no question about the truth of the matter that's being spoken. And I think that's really what, you know, you were saying and what Rob is trying to get at.
Okay. Go ahead, Justin. You up.
And when we understand ethnicity, we'll understand that anybody that was enslaved that is black, or what they consider black, or we're just going to use that term right now, had knowledge of the land right? And so ethnicity helps us understand, rather than race, understand how intellectual we are when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to economics, when it comes to ecosystems in general. And so when we understand our ethnicity, we were able to farm without not the slave masters didn't teach us how to farm. So ethnicity will teach us that. And that's what's important. Race won't teach us that because race is a recent construct. Ethnicity will tell you that they were hiding rice in their hair, right? When that so-called people that came over from Africa. So then we already knew how to what? Farm rice. So those are things that are very important to understand. So then it gives you a sense of purpose and belonging, and then it can arm you with information. So when if because I'm not in that cipher, do you know I'm not in the my white counterparts? I don't even look at my white counterparts. I don't know who they are. So, but like people that are in that cipher or in that community where they have to meet white people every day and don't feel confident enough, when you know your history, your ethnicity, you're able to say, well, in order for you guys to even get the Industrial Revolution, you needed people that understood how to be architects. You know what I mean? The people of Mali, all those people knew already how to create
Absolutely.
ecosystems and infrastructure, and ethnicity will teach you that. And people have to find out all the ethnicities of Africa, or what they call Africa. Find them out, because there's so many different nations and that have created ecosystems that are still used today, and economies that are still used today, and economic concepts that are also used today.
Okay, good point.
And I think
Minnie, where we at? Go ahead, Annie. Minnie, you just hold up, Minnie. Where we at, Minnie? Minnie, you're on.
So it's all very interesting, and I kind of wanted the conversation to lead to what Justin was talking about how race is not as relevant. It's not relevant at all, but compared to ethnicity, the best thing I did for myself was find my tribe, and I'm learning so much about why I am the way I am. And maybe establishing a false causality, but I see so much of myself in the history of my people that is helping me understand how or why I am the way that I am. Like, I've never respected patriots, ever. I don't come from a patriarchal people. You know what I mean? So social issues, for example, like, violence, in the generation, in the community and stuff. It's not a priority for me as opposed to systemic racism, because when my people, they've reallocated resources. And I know that the violence in the fight is just a struggle for resources, or due to a lack of resources. I'm learning so much about myself. The blood is important, and I don't care what science says. We inherit memory. We inherit these things.
I agree.
Even from a baby, like learning how to walk. How does a baby know or have the cognitive ability to learn how to? They remember from somewhere. Where does that memory of how to grow and how to walk, how to form sounds with your mouth and stuff like that? They got to come from somewhere. We just don't understand that. But to answer the question, right, about what do we need to do, and one thing that I've always found admirable about the white elite or the 1%, whatever you want to call them, is their ability to come to an agreement, even if it's based on a lie, and then perpetuate that shit throughout generations. All we need to do, even regardless of the history, or despite the history, all we got to do is agree. Like that's it. All we have to do is agree. Agree that this is what we want to be. Agree that this is how I want to be classified. Agree that this is what we deserve. This is what we need. All we have to do is agree. It don't matter what we call ourselves, as long as we're the ones naming ourselves. The different people, like we always say, changing the narrative. People, the language for the first time in a very, very long time, and self-identify. This is who we are, as opposed to generations of trying to fit into spaces that weren't carved out for us.
Go ahead, Rob.
One of the things that Mark said, he said a lot of things I agree with, and then he also said a lot of things that went over my head. I'm like, damn, I need to graduate school all over again. But one of the things he said is, everybody ain't gonna get it, and I understand that, and I agree with that. And D, on our history, if I was back in college at Southern together with you, you would
Yeah, I remember.
you would have pointed at me like, yo, don't talk to that dude. He ain't gonna get it. He's on some other shit. I think it's important not to give up. And I'm not implying that you're giving up on people. I think meet people where they're at, not give up on folks, but also pay attention to the signs too. While I might have been on the other shit at Southern, I was still black, and I was very well aware of that, and didn't run from that. But I was definitely on some other stuff. We got to when us as a people really understand the history, the richness of his history, the impact that we have on the culture, the impact that we have on human history, the impact that we have on the development and growth of this country from every facet, from right down from kids, because we have the Young Scholars Program, and the curriculum's 100% black. We need to get our self-esteem up as a community, because we find it, and Minnie and I were talking about this, before the calls, like people are afraid to say black. People are saying all this other terminology to avoid to say black, and it's like, why are we worried about white people's feelings? They're not worried about our feelings. Why are we worried about making them comfortable? They're not worried about making us comfortable. There's so much richness in blackness, the culture, the education, and the technology and the advancements. We need to find a way to continue to, we need to continue the fight. We need to continue educating our community, and we have to be consistent, and we have to put our community first. And that's not being selfish. My contention is that we need to be a little bit xenophobic. Everybody else is. There's nobody else that doesn't put their community first. Because your community is your family. That's all I gotta say for right now.
I have a comment from Emma Genesee. She says, you could be doing all the research in the world and still be working to identify your being according to a rationale produced to perpetuate a social system meant to make non-white people inferior. So is there harm in continuing to use terminology that was framed by racist scientific intellectuals? Do we need to move forward with a newer understanding? Do we need to create new terminology that speaks to the experience of all peoples harmed? Or is it more important to identify and unify with people who share a specific experience? So there's a series of questions that she's throwing out there. Anybody want to take a stab at responding for her? All right, Justin.
So first, and because we're in this current condition, I believe we have to search for commonalities. So to answer a question, the common experience, we have to unite on that. Because in order for anybody to understand the Moorish Empire, and that we're the indigenous people, the fuzz, everything that comes with that, or the Israelite, whatever the case is, they still have to learn that they were enslaved at some point. So let's start there. We were enslaved at some point in the Americas to their history. So we share that commonality, and so any divide within, okay, I'm an Israelite, will cause contention, obviously, and then split us apart again, right? We have to come with that commonality first, and then I think her first question was, but does it?
She said, is there harm in continuing to use terminology that was framed by racist scientific intellectuals?
And I think there is. You know what I mean? I'm gonna throw a shot at you more. Oh my God! But in the sense of you keep on defining things and using etymology of words, using a bastardized language and not using your Moorish language that consists of more than 300 tribes, right? Then, right, because the Moor is the empire with tribes under it, then we keep on defining things in accordance to how they define things. And so we have to go back and I'm not saying we just eliminate the language completely, but we start integrating to our best knowledge what we used to speak when we first came here or when we were already here. And that happens when we have a commonality. But if we don't, then we're just going to be tracing so many different lineages back and forth and not ever being able to get to the table.
I would say we're not going to come to the table until we realize what you're saying. I agree. But the table is only set for those that understand who and what they are. So as long as you keep disrespecting your nationality or your ethnicity, whatever it is, and you're not walking in the truth of what you are, you're going to perish with the lie that you're living. You see what I'm saying? So you have to return in essence to what you are. It's all just a return to what you are. People dreading their hair, people growing their hair out, things that you see us doing as people that have color, that we're trying to return to who we are. You know what I mean? So that's why everybody don't want to be called black no more, because they're realizing that we're not that. So the way you realize who you are, what you are, is by realizing what you're not. That's how you realize things, is through realizing what it's not. You see what I'm saying? It's an evolutionary process. So a lot of us are undergoing this process at this moment. So it's a breaking apart of what you thought you were. The things that you built all these tenets on, these tenets of your foundations of what you think you are, you're breaking them down and you have to build something up from the pieces. So it's not going to be a new Moorish empire. It's not going to be what I'm saying. It's going to be people that move in the understanding of what you were and what you're going into being. You see what I'm saying? So it's not going to be the people that's relishing the aspects of the past that were perpetuated on lies. You see what I'm saying? So it's a lot of illusionary things. So, and I wouldn't coalesce under the experience of the pain when you have the experience, the same experience of raining. You see what I'm saying? You just it's not common to everyone, but the painful experience is the one that they're manipulating you through, because he's the one that's giving it to you through his channels when you're indoctrinated through your school mechanism. So that's why you're unlearning a lot. As you relearn, you got to unlearn. So you're unlearning
So basically,
a lot. You see what I'm saying?
I'm digging what you're saying. You're basically saying stop basing our existence on all the negative stuff, all the lies, everything else that they've told us, and focus on all the positives, all the capacities that existed pre them and where we are now. Am I right?
Because the best you is inside you, even on your worst day.
Okay. All right, Rob, you had your hand up, and then I see you, sis. I seen you. Rob had his up first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I like the way that sounds, but I got to disagree with that. You know, people are not saying black anymore because they're evolving. I mean, we can evolve and still say black. The reason why I think it's important to say black is because, you know, resources that are aligned for other groups, nationalities, and ethnicities are being allocated and have been allocated since forever away from black people. So when you stop saying black, you're falling in the hands of the dominant society in terms of continuing to box you out from resources and opportunities.
So, Rob, are you saying, politically speaking, in order for us to be afforded any resources or opportunities, we need to kind of unite under one common banner? And right now, the banner for you is just the term black.
Black, politically and economically speaking, yes. Because
okay. Hold up, Minnie's next. All right. Unless you want to respond to that, Rob.
Nah, I just don't like you cutting me off.
I gotta be Roland Martin today. Go ahead.
I forgot what I was going to say. I just want to say that, you know, a common language is one of the most identifying factors when it comes to classification of anybody. So if we're going to agree, I think what Rob is saying is that we need to agree on something, and that something would be black. But a common language is the first thing we need to agree on. Before we even do that, can we just agree that this is our language, or can we commit to the learning and education starting, you know, at a very young age about what language we're going to speak? I think that has to be the very first thing that we do, regardless of anything. And I'm not sure what the first thing is. And what's with black though? Why can't we? How is black harmful? And is it only harmful because we have not defined what that is? And furthermore, so I did, I traced my the lineage down to Bantu, Bouvier Booty Bantu. So if somebody asks me who I am, what I am, should I say Bantu? Should I feel Bantu in my spirit? You know what I'm saying?
It would make more sense. It would make sense to me. They're one of the oldest tribes in the world.
I've been studying. I've been studying.
It's like if you're going to go back to the beginning, why don't you go all the way back to one of the oldest existing tribes in the world? But what do I know? And I think one of my only.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm cutting them off.
Go ahead.
No, I was listening to you. I'm sorry. I
was just gonna say to her point.
To Equatorial Guinea. I'm from the Bioko Island off of Equatorial Guinea. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm learning a lot for myself and I see the connections, but you know, I'm black.
I was gonna say the black law codes. I think it was 1674 or 1664, something like that. The black law codes. That was when the Spanish made being black that thing. That's how they set up the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which were war amendments. You see what I'm saying? Because we're the ones that made the Rainbow Coalition, which created the United States Constitution. So it's just saying black is basically saying you're dead. On that level, it's saying you're dead. On a metaphysical level, it's saying you're dead. But at a law level, you get Black's Law Dictionary, number fourth edition. It explains that black is civilly more too. You know,
were we not black before that though? Were we not black before that? Like, is it?
No. So it's not.
Ethiopia is a dark skin or a black person.
That's what I'm saying. And so is Kemet, land of the blacks. You know what I'm saying? Was we not black before that?
Yeah, and Kemet, it was Maur, M-A-U-R, right? So that would be the high priest of Anu. Right, so in Kemet it was the Moors, M-A-U-R, which is the high priest of Anu, and all of these high priests of Anu, these Moors, these are the people that descended, that they created all of these governments off of essentially what you were at that time and high and older. Because Kemet is not the oldest civilization. You got to go back further. You got to go to Draconia. You got to go to Tartaria. You got to go to Typhonia. You see what I'm saying? These are places that if you say this, people be like, "What you talking about?" But it's just that's all of those are iterations of yourself. And it's as you are coming, and as a version of the creator, you are an aperture of the creator. So your creator exchanges information through you. You see what I'm saying? But as being the Moor, that's why you call it a navel. You see what I'm saying? You navigated to this realm through your mom, your your navel. You know, you navigated to your mom. You tethered on your mom. Even existing is called mooring. A Moor is dark and swarthy person. American's Heritage Dictionary. A Moor is a dark and swarthy person. So it wasn't just to say like as a distinction of a political distinction. It was actually to describe someone. It was to say they were Maori, dark and swarthy, being like, you know what I mean? Being like the woods, being like a tree, being like nature. You see what I'm saying? So it's just a description. It's to get away from what they're giving you to serve yourself as. Because once you say you black, and then once they say this is what happened to black people, they can tie you to that false experience, and that's called synthetic synchronicity. Then he gets you tied to an experience that you don't even have, and then vicariously you're picking up all this negative energy. So I can't tell my son he's a slave if I can't tell my son that he was also the king. But if I focus on the slavery part, my son will subjugate himself under that authority in that way. When the whole part is the whole story.
But if you live your whole life assuming, if you're working with your people trying to move them forward, and you just act as if slavery never existed, it makes it easier to fall back into the same trap that got us here. Correct or incorrect?
I wouldn't agree, because slavery, in the sense that you're talking about, it only serves them. It's not historically based off the fact of you being here initially. And
no, I get that.
So you're preaching up. It's a falsity. It's the way.
I'm not preaching, brother. Hold up, check. No, check this out. I'm not preaching anything.
Okay.
I'm asking you a question.
I hear you.
Now, the same way you don't want to be judged for the information that you're sharing, I'm asking that I not be judged on the questions that I'm asking. Again, it's not about me. I've done my homework. Everything you're spewing, I can spew right along with you. My job is to make sure that the people who are watching, this ain't no debate. I need to make sure that the people who are watching, make sure they understand this. So I'm asking a question. So I'm not spewing anything. So what I'm saying is, when you say, let's talk about when we reigned, I agree with that 100%. So should we not teach our kids that these same people that are oppressing us now enslaved us? That was my question to you. That's all.
No, I think I believe we should tell them that part of the story, but don't focus on it. Right, as we currently stand in this system, this public school curriculum, that's the focus in the culture, because they focusing on that part to weaken you. And when I say they, I'm saying, where are you getting these messages from? You get it from school, which is they're not going to give you anything in the public school curriculum that's outside of a guideline.
Mark, I dig, and you're absolutely right. 100%, you're right. And I guess if I'm going to make a statement, my statement is, and I've been saying it for every show, we need to discard this school system they set up for us, period. So our kids aren't going to learn anything from there. Most of the things that I learned that my kids learned, they've learned right here in the home. So I agree with you on that part. Hanif, you had your hand up, you're waving it. Go for it.
You know, there's a lot of things that are being said here. You know, here's the thing. First off, when we talk about, you know, why you know, when I think about what Rob is saying about, you know, identifying as Black, you know, Mark, a lot of the stuff that you're saying there, I would guarantee you that at least 50% of the people that are listening to this right now have probably never heard it before. So when you try to unite people around a common banner, you know, it's got to be something that's common to all people. You know, we could talk about the historical significance. We could talk about the metaphysical significance. We could talk about all these different things that may indeed be factual. But when Mark is talking about uniting under a common banner, he's talking about uniting under something that everyone can identify with as a commonality. And when we start talking about the whole educational system, I think the one thing that we keep forgetting is that, and I had an experience that I had to say something about this to my son's school, is that the school is not in charge of our children's education. We are. And anytime my son brings home a lesson or does something that's not true, I'm like, no, that ain't true. This is what it really is. You know, and we have to stop, you know, thinking, and I'm not saying this is what you're doing. I'm making this as a general statement. We have to stop thinking that the public school system is in charge of our children's education. It's us that are in charge of our children's education. And when we start talking about uniting under a common banner, we can educate our children and our community on all of these different things. But to what Emma's point is, and this is what I think she was trying to get at, is that there's a majority of people that don't know any of this. And there's a majority of people that, even if they heard it, probably wouldn't believe it because they're too busy believing something else that they've already been told. So how do we look at, in terms of moving forward, uniting everyone with something that is common to everyone? And it's not a matter of saying, you know, that by saying, and whether you agree with it or not, it's not a matter of saying, well, you know, identifying as Black is evil because of these things, or bad because of these things, as much as it is, why do I have to subscribe to what someone else says it is if that's the common unifier? I'm not saying that that's going to be the common unifier or that it should be the common unifier. But to the average person, my skin tone and darker, they understand Black much more than they understand More. So how do we find some common ground for everyone to be able to unify under? And that's really where I think this conversation, when we're talking about this, goes, because we can, amongst ourselves, we can teach each other what we know. And once again, going back to an earlier comment I said, we can give someone all the tools and show them how to verify, because we have people from all walks of life police us for hundreds of years based off of their slick talking. It's got to go beyond whether it sounds good or not. It's got to be verifiable. It's got to be digestible. It's got to be understandable. But there still has to be one commonality that we can all come together with if the effort is for us to come together for the betterment of one another.
All right, Justin, then Minnie, go.
I think that it's wrong for us to say Black. So yes, I'm in agreement with you, my Moorish brother. So when you say Black, it's like trying to clean dirty water with clean water. It's not going to happen. You understand? So if you keep on using the word Black, you're using a terminology that was meant to subjugate people, to marginalize people. So you have to start from there. That is inherently the problem, actually. All right. So that word Black can be the start and the starting point of what is the problem. Right. Second to that, Native Americans don't call themselves the red people, even though they were identified as the red people. The reason why the only reason why they got reparations, but they identify and they keep identifying as being the tribe in which they're from. And that's why sometimes they get reparations. Not saying that's in totality of the reason, but we can't identify as just being black and thinking that we're going to get something from the government just because we said we're black. That's into Rob's statement, right? And so
weren't the Native American tribes? But although they were, annihilated, separated, segregated, all that wonderful stuff, but they were still able to retain their cultural and tribal history, correct? To compare, I guess, foundational Black Americans to the Native American tribe is kind of asinine because half of us, let me finish, which is why we're having the conversation now. Some of us are just now finding out through DNA and all that other ish where our people came from, what the experiences with those. We got people who have no contact with their relatives down in the South and can't talk about any of the experiences that their family members went through for generations. So unlike there's a reason why they don't have to call themselves red. When you have a race of people, well, a group of people, collective of folks who went through what they went through over the last 300 to 400 years, well, of course we're gonna have a lot of people who are like blank slate, and they're going to go with black. So we can't use that as a compare and contrast, and that's a bad example.
You know, it's not a bad example. I'll tell you why.
Right,
because
so break down.
They did the same thing. They did the same thing. Native Americans are Tainos. There's a whole bunch of Native Americans, right?
Arawak, Taino, we can break them all down.
Go for it, right? Guess what? Annihilating people through race, right, and through race breeding happened to them as well, right? I'm not saying that everything was equal. So they went through a very similar situation. What they did, though, that was different, was they fled and they kept a lot of their views and a lot of their customs, right? And so they're able to trace a little better than us. Granted, we had the brunt of what you would call historical annihilation more so than they did. But that's not an uncomparable example because they were slaves as well. And then second to that, so when you're talking about the fact that we don't have to start at slavery, right? But if that's the only thing that people want to start off, that's cool. But while the Morris brothers said,
and we shouldn't. We shouldn't start at slavery.
Mm-hmm. So So I don't think that's the common denominator. Like we're all brown people. Most brown people come from this continent or this world. Period. 70% of this earth is brown people. Anyway, so we can unite.
So don't call yourself black, but call yourself brown.
If you're gonna call yourself what you are, just off description, then I would say call yourself brown. If you're not gonna say what you is politically or your nationality, the nationality part is to pay your mother tribute. You know, your nation of origin, your mother nation. You know, so the more births the Mason. So you can't. And Native Americans, that's a term that was coined.
But what if my people?
I'm gonna get to your point a little bit with the Native Americans. You previous to the Native Americans, but what the Native Americans is when you got these people that came in that we had already contractually started to do business with, and through this method that I'm telling you is how they were able to. So that's how you're able to come into the $5 Indian, where all of these people that are pale now they're in the family and they say, "Oh, I'm Indian," but it wasn't because they were Indian. They were the version that came through these methods I'm talking about, through reclassification and this paperwork. It's not to say that you're gonna. All of it is mental slavery. Starts in the mind. So just doing this show, you waking people up to it. Just doing what you're doing in this way, in my opinion, is the device. That one of the devices that wakes people up to it. So as you agitate it, you wake it up, and people become more aware of what it's like. The aroma gets loosened up. You know, like when you shake up a bag of weed or something, the aroma comes out. You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of like what you're doing when you do the show. You perpetuate the conversation, which stimulates the understanding of everybody to triangulate back to where they came from, back. Because that's all you're really trying to do is get back to zero. Going to 1 and 2 and 3, how you gonna get to 3, 4, 5 if you never even know? You never start at zero. You got people loaded you up. Everybody speaking something different, but everybody got a commonality, understanding that we was first. That's what I'm hearing through everybody conversation. We were like, okay, we first. So if we first, what was you doing when you was first? What was the things that you had going on? If you birthed civilization, why are you not getting back to those things right now? Why are you not concentrating on exactly what you're doing? Because you don't know what you was doing, because you keep arguing different points of where you was at in your story. That's all I'm trying to say. You got picking one is not going to happen until you realize exactly who and what you is. Once you realize in that, then everything y'all saying I agree with too. It's all, but it's a circle. It can't happen. So one is the other. So you doing this is a part of it, but it's not going to be one coalesced person that's not going to be compromised. That's going to come through a channel. Every leader that we had was compromised. Every leader we had in some way was compromised by a system that put them in power. But I will say this, the universe has the final call. So prophets and leaders are divinely inspired, and there's been on each side of man, the left and the right. There's been prophets that came to steer man in the crazy direction. There's been prophets that came to steer man back into the light. And that's the dance that you're dancing with. And this is the dynamic journey that we're going on, being human and a part of a human family. You see what I'm saying? So we all is commonality, having this experience, having this conversation, feeding this information back to source, which comes back in the form of whatever else we dealing with. So that's what I'm saying. Bravo to you, brother. Just being here, disagreeing or agreeing, it don't matter, because the stimulation is the understanding. Sometimes when you argue with your girl, the truth come out. You know how, like, when you argue with somebody, the truth come out? You know, sometimes you're debating and you listen to a debate, you like, damn, all the truth coming out in this debate because they're going at each other, but sometimes that's what drives it out. So I'm not coming at nobody. I apologize again if my tone is gruff, but I'm just saying the time is short for us to be going back and forth in any way. So I'm just going to put it out. Y'all can fight me, punch me in the face, and I don't even care at this point, because I'm like, well, damn, at least now we talking about it. Because nobody's talking about it, and a few people was talking about it, and the people that are talking about it are benefiting from it, and we're not. You see what I'm saying? So when I go places, I don't break all this down. I just be like, yo, I love you. We both brown. Don't say you black if you brown. Do white people say they pink if they pink? So why, if you're going off the color of what you is, at least say what you is. But saying black is mental cognitive dissonance. That's something that was programmed into you. Everything you say about yourself, you're going to run it like a program. Just like your phone, when you press an app, and then you click off and then go to another app, it's still running in the background. So when you say black, you're running everything you know about black in the background. It don't matter what you do and learning on top of that. So you got to unlearn the parts that you don't need and put in what you do need to move forward. You see what I'm saying? It don't matter if the shit is true or not. You can make your own story up. We done lost most of the books anyway. I'm not coming here telling you I'm right about nothing. All that stuff that I'm telling you could be wrong. All I'm telling you is make a future for yourself where you're on top. Stop remembering the past so you can stay on the bottom all the way into the future. If the past is what's holding you back, then forget it then. Yes, I'm radical mentally. I go places people don't go mentally. You see what I'm saying? I'll go there anywhere physically you want. I'll die and come back. I don't care.
All right, Mark.
I'm been ready to die.
Mark.
You know what I'm saying?
But the show is a collective show about all of us. I get you. I get you.
I'm just telling you, that's the commonality I see, is that
I get you.
Together under something good.
Okay.
Let's build something good together.
I'm not bothering
like
him.
A brigade, like a brigade. Like we come together and we just take everything over because we already the most powerful. So we can take over anything. All we got to do is just say, yo, you know what? All right, then forget it. Let's remember it like this. You do that sometimes when you have a bad memory. You don't want to remember it the way it happened. You just make your own memory. You know what I'm saying? You could just do that. You could just make your own story. You could just move off something. You don't have to remember it the way he's telling you to remember it. Even if you don't remember it the way you did it, is what I'm trying to say. You don't have to let nothing hold you back. But
hey, Mark, can I give you a number break?
Hold us
back.
No,
I got next.
Oh, all right. Go ahead.
I've been waiting for a minute. Patiently.
Go ahead. I say that.
That was deep, Mark, for real. And I feel like I definitely understand where you was coming from. Because I'm like, so what's the problem with black? Especially when you start to describe what the war is. I'm like, that sounds like a descriptive word. So what's wrong with using that descriptive word? But I understand what you were saying about, you know what I'm saying, how it affects the software. You know what I'm saying? That's running in the background. How your subconscious is gonna affect your conscious and manifest its own reality. And that's not so manifest your own reality. Don't build on the premise or the foundation that is false in its entirety to begin with. If it's gonna be false, let it be your false truth, and that's somebody else's false truth. I get it. I feel you. And the term war doesn't necessarily have that negative connotation. You can reprogram yourself. If you change that term, it don't even have to be more. Call yourself whatever the hell you want, but don't let it be black. Let it be based on whatever it is that you say it is, even if that ain't what it is. I felt that. And I agree. And I still think that we should start with a language, because I think that
that's the part I agree with.
I think that if we all collectively agree on the language, we can start to change that narrative. Not even change that narrative, just start a new narrative based on a language that is deeply rooted, even if not in antiquity, but in moving forward, and we're going forward. And I felt that. and I felt that. So you saying go back to zero, right? And I feel you on that, because that's the journey. When I found my tribe, I'm able to say I don't know why, I just never respected the church. I don't care if you call it Christianity, you call it the government, you know, working for other people. I just never respected it. But I don't come from that people. That's not inherent in my genetic makeup. That's not who I am. I come from a matriarchal people. So I definitely feel that. But how do I find out if I find out who I am or what I am? You know, if I want to base it in as close to reality as I can, like what do we do? How do we determine what we are? And I think that has to be measurable to an extent if we're going to come to a consensus and a mutual understanding. And I was reading, and why we need to do this, it goes back to the resources too. Like there was a case that I read about a couple of years ago where this white dude wanted to benefit from like some government grant by being a minority or whatever, and he did a genetic test in 2010. It's probably compared to you know, what we're working with these days, but he was like 7% sub-Saharan African, and he was like, you know, I'm black, I'm disparate, I'm disenfranchised. You know what I'm saying? I qualify for this loan for my small business, and we're running into issues like, okay, how do we quantify what a minority is, or what a disenfranchised person is? Because this man is saying genetically he's 7% African, but you're born privileged, you look white, you can't prove any type of discrimination based on, you know what I'm saying, that 7% being sub-Saharan African. So how do we determine who we are? What is the criteria? What's the process? If somebody is 49% of African descent, does that mean they're not African enough? Does that mean they're not black? Even though their hair is kinky and well, like how moving forward, how do we define this? Even if we don't have a name for it, like how are we gonna measure this? Who's gonna be black? Who's gonna be more and who's not?
So you want me to answer, bro?
Anybody. I just how are we gonna quantitate it?
I would say anything besides you could be Pacific Islander. Even on the census, there was a spot for Pacific Islander. You know, you could trace yourself back to pretty much any part of the landmass. It was a divide, you know, genetically with the people, with you know, human beings, like the human race. A race will be a type of people, you know, not a color of people, but they made it through the way they, you know, divided up the language, and the colorable language that they use has become a description now. You know what I'm saying? But no, even if you on your census identified as Pacific Islander, because black right now is a term, like I said, it's a label that was created when this corporatocracy was erected. I'm sorry. And so that label is owned and that label is used. So right now, black is maybe transsexual, queer, homosexual, also dark skin, also this, also pale. You know, black is everything they want it to be because it's their label. So when you claim that label, you're their property. 13, 14, 15th Amendment. We know this already, right? So you gotta go to the Secretary of State and you gotta put yourself on record as being something other than black. That's all you have to do. That's something that you could do right now. Everybody on the podcast, anybody that's here, go do what you don't got to do what I told you to do. Just go look into what I'm telling you to do. That way you're not on record as something that's being owned, a parcel and chattel property. You understand what I'm saying? Because when you're born, you're at the hospital and you get a birth certificate. You don't get a certificate of live birth. You get a birth certificate. A birth certificate is totally different from something you might get like when you're born down south or in another country. You get a piece of paper somebody wrote. You know what I mean? You get a birth certificate. That birth certificate ties Social Security card. Once you get a Social Security card, that's a bond. So that means it's backed by a trust. So you're bonded. You're partial. You see what I'm saying? So you're basically, that's how you make money. I'm not saying break it up and don't do it no more. I'm just saying at least understand what you're doing and how you authored it, and so you can change it. That's why I say everything's dissolving right now. So it's going to break away from everything it was. It's going to break down into its primal components. Those that know what to do with it is going to pick it up and form something new, which is us. Us in varying forms, right? We all researching, we all learning. So we
Right.
always gonna be the ones
So
moving
don't
forward
usually
that's gonna
subject
push into the
yourself
atmosphere.
to the
All right.
jurisdiction of America.
You
Is
see
what
what
you're
I'm saying?
saying.
Because you're the American.
Yeah.
We're the American. That's what I'm saying. You're the only real American based off the fact you're
Yeah.
the copper tone inhabitant of this landmass. That's the definition of American. Copper tone inhabitant of this landmass.
As an American, I'm gonna let y'all know we're at the 1 hour and 30 minute mark, and I don't want to have this thing drag out till 2 o'clock. So there are a couple of things on the sidelines that we got. Imogen C says, "Is it enough to call ourselves enslaved or descendants of enslaved peoples?" I don't know if everybody can see this.
White people don't. White people were indentured slaves. They don't call themselves slaves. Sorry.
I agree. I think I'm with Mark on that one. I think listen, man, even for our folks who are in bondage, when you look at the strong percentage of them that fought to be free, I don't think we have to use that term anyways. I hate when they say, "Oh, they were slaves." When they were slaves, nah, they were still men. They were human beings. They were women, human beings. So I agree with Mark on that part. The other part is 2:30. Let's see, anybody else? Da 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 da. Oh, Minnie, you had a question regarding how do we determine who's who. Rachel Dolezal identified as black. You remember her? NAACP. So at the end of the day, if we're gonna break it down to the down to the core of the essence of who we believe we were originally, didn't she have every right to say she was black?
What does that have to do with it, though? What does that have to do with us calling
No,
ourselves
she
black?
asked the question. No, Minnie asked the question. Minnie, you want to ask that question again? Minnie
Like
said.
if you
Minnie said. She said if somebody was 49% African or 37% look at their DNA, how do we determine? So my response is, based on what the brother said earlier, if you take it back to your core to who everybody was, all life originated off the continent. So if she identifies something, some ancestor inside her was saying, yo, this is who you really are. She decides this is who I am. She claims it, and that's the life she lives. Who are we? Nah, brother, let me finish. Who are we to tell her what she is not? If we're going back to our original essence.
It's all about the blood.
You can make it up. You make it up.
You said it's all about the blood. If her bloodline, even as the European, since all life originated in the same place, if her bloodline takes her back that way, who are we to deny her?
No, I'm saying it's all about the blood as far as the genetic distinctions and variations. There's more of a separation genetically between us as the same as brown and brown. Like me and you as two brown men across from each other, there's more genetic variation in us than there is between us and a pale person. Do you understand what I'm saying? Can you understand that? There's more of a
I do. I know exactly. I have a nephew, half white. The mother is also half white, and her genetic variation is way off, and he looks like a little blonde haired white kid. But he's my blood.
Right.
So is he not like me?
It's not. So what I'm saying is not about color. It's all about.
No. I didn't mention color. I mentioned blood.
Yeah, so it's about the genetic variations in the blood, the markers in the blood. Even so much as far as the coronavirus, how it affects people with the RH. The RH, the rhesus monkeys, the RH. That's when the blood split. You got people on Earth like us, but that's in the human family that don't have those markers as far as those connections to the rhesus.
This is real science, though.
RH in the blood.
I already knew this. I needed him to say it out loud. That's all. So Justin, real quick, and then we're gonna go down to closing thoughts. Go ahead, say it.
Yeah. So the RH blood is a pure fact. So people don't have to be like, oh, he's making something up. This is scientific stuff.
No, he didn't make it up.
100% for the black white people that don't understand they're black or brown, right? And then
I'm never gonna say I'm brown. I'm gonna find the color somewhere in the middle. I refuse to say brown. I'm gonna say anything but go ahead.
But I just real quick, I know I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it. The DNA structure of black people, brown people, we're closer together than white people. So when you talk about DNA, there's different coding systems. It's mRNA, RNA, and to understand that and say that's not 100% true, because then you're going to separate us even more. But when you talk about our DNA, we're closer because of in proximity. So if somebody is from Nigeria and then somebody else is from the Congo or thing, because they're so close in proximity and their environment is very similar, their DNA is going to be somewhat similar as according to somebody that's from not even Australia, wherever.
About the Aborigines, really?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't go.
I mean,
Yeah,
so I'm hearing what. So basically, what you're saying is, so it's based on the melanin level in the skin.
It's based on actually, it's your habitat. Your habitat matters more than anything when it comes to your DNA.
Absolutely. Okay. I still don't know how all this helps us when people out there trying to determine who. Minnie, what is that face for?
Because I don't think nobody really answered your question. I was going to refrain. So basically, you saying you got a blood relative that's a quarter black. That's your blood relative. He's sitting at Thanksgiving with you. You know what I'm saying? He's a reflection of you. But at what point is who is black? How are we?
Well, black. That's what I'm saying. Black is not a distinction.
You have to be more than 30% genetically speaking. Are you saying that I have more in common with the Asian men in America because of proximity as opposed to this is on the motherland?
So, for the sake of conversation and be consistent with Justin and Mark, I'm asking, how do I determine what level of brownness is he if I can't say black?
You saying what level of brownness?
It's all black. Kamala Harris.
What I'm saying, what do you, when you say black, what are you saying? You saying as far as how dark you are, or how what are you saying? The amount of melanin? You saying the amount of the way your color is what you mean blackness?
If race is a non-factor, right? If it's not relevant, right? And you can what do you want to call it?
What I'm saying
is a factor.
You're African descent. The descent is the part of you that's dying off. Your ancestry is your living history. So you could be African descent, but of Moorish ancestry. I think this is where a lot of people are getting confused. Your descent is the part of you that's dying. Descent, dead, deceased. So the descent is the part of you that's dying off. The part that lives within you is your Moorish ancestry. So everybody can trace themselves back to a different part of the Moorish Empire. All these parts you're saying is still all parts of the Moorish Empire. Whatever part that you said came first, you still all the same thing. That's why I said you all still is Moor. But because the Prophet Nubu Dri Ali came and said this. He said everybody's a Moor. You're all gonna fight over it till y'all realize. So prophets that came in the name of this thing already said this already. I'm not saying
Mark,
you don't.
I just have a question. In terms of the Moorish Empire, would you say the entire continent of Africa was Moorish Empire?
Yes. The entire world, all the continents. There's even mountains in Antarctica.
I got you. I feel you. I got you. So now, right? Who's everybody? When you say everybody can trace,
the Asiatics.
Huh?
The Asiatics, the people that was what you would call in Europe and Asia. So you got Asia, that's the Asiatic people. It's all those people like Genghis Khan. Those are all our they're like cousins, you know what I mean? In South America would be like your brothers and sisters. You see what I'm saying? So in that human family, there's a strata that you're referring to, but then there's somebody that's outside of that family that don't really fit in. And that's the one that's telling everybody that he got a place here and he got a history and you don't got no history. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's the one telling you that you don't got nothing, but everybody else is a part of you. But it's somebody out there saying that you don't have no place, and he got your place, and he keep trying to convince you that your place is his place, saying
Stolen
that he's
legacy.
a Jew, when you know that you the Jew, and he telling you he a Jew. Stuff
Stolen
like
legacy.
Stolen legacy. Like that.
So we in a room, right? And it's all different types of people. Are you saying that you can pick out the Moors from the non-Moors? And if so,
no. You see, the Moorish part was an empire, so you an Asiatic family. In the family, you're an Asiatic family, so you will be an Asiatic. You know what I'm saying? Because all of that was Asia at one point. You see, Eurasia. You see what I'm saying? So you could be referred to as the Asiatic people. So you're Asiatic. You don't have to say brown. You don't even got to say black. You can say Asiatic. People refer to themselves as the nigga, the Asiatic the people of this continent. You know what I'm saying? So there's many references. You don't have to just say one thing, but that thing, if you say you're that thing, there's black law codes and there's laws on the books to detain and kill that thing. So when you say you're that thing and you keep on to claim that thing, which you're not, which is a lie, then you keep dying with that lie. Do you understand what I'm saying? because that's not what
I'm
you
lost.
are.
I get
So
what
when you're
you're
old,
saying.
Hold up,
they're gonna kill that thing.
I gotta wrap up.
All
I
right,
got no.
can we continue this off the air?
Absolutely.
You know what?
Absolutely.
Mark, for the sake of
Yeah.
conversation, well, I think we may have to come back and just have a specific conversation about the Morris Nation.
Let's do it.
All right,
Let's do it.
Rob, closing
I'm
thoughts.
ready.
You had your hand up about a half an hour.
Yeah, man. I think we're splitting hairs here, and this is just my opinion. You know, Mark, you mentioned, you know, the $5 Indians, the Dawes rolls. Those people weren't paying $5 to get on those rolls for anything else but to get access to resources. White people always want they don't like to be excluded. They'll go against their own self-interest to exclude you, even if it hurts them. You know, I'm not going to click off Pacific Islander. I'm black. And if I got to pick a term, I'm picking foundational Black American. At the end of the day, you know, I live on Sumner Ave in Springfield. I want to be able to get a loan at you know, a good interest rate and not have John McGillicuddy get that same loan at a better interest rate, and I'm getting an inflated interest rate. You know, the philosophical, you mentioned, you know, we're on a dynamic journey, and I agree with that. But you know, there's a lot of metaphysical and philosophical conversations going on here. But you know, it still doesn't mitigate the fact that we're living in the United States and we need to, you know, work or earn a living or open a business and take care of our family. And you're talking about these laws, they create the laws. So if you check out this box, they can turn around and say, yeah, based on our I check list, because I'm white and I say so, you really got to click off black. We're not going to allow you to do that. So, you know, one of the things that we didn't answer is, how do we take all this knowledge and information and how do we synthesize it down to actionable items and execute on those actionable items? I mean, everything's philosophical, educational, and some science-based stuff, but it's not pushing the lever. It's not driving the lever in terms of, okay, what do we do with this information? How do we help us enhance ourselves living in this capitalist, racist society?
God, I got dozens of ways. I got dozens of ways for you to do.
Oh, no. We don't want to go back and forth. I'm closing up. We got to wrap up. We have to come back and have that conversation. So, Rob, those are your closing thoughts?
Yes, sir.
All right. Minnie, closing thoughts.
Yeah, this went a lot of different ways, and I think that it is important, you know, for us to take this knowledge and make it applicable to, you know, improving our circumstances. And I'm pretty versatile, you know. Let's just agree. You know, if we're gonna be black, let's just be already black. No that's black. Let's be black. If we're going to declare ourselves a nation, whatever we're gonna do, let's just get it done. And you know, knowledge itself is a perpetual journey. And I think, I mean, am I going to, if we start our tribes, and are we going to have a new one, or should everybody go trace their lineage line back to a specific, like what are we going to do? I don't think that anybody is going to agree to us being any one thing. So maybe we do have to reclassify ourselves as something entirely different, something new. Maybe that's the way to go. But I just want us to do something. Can we do something? I don't know what that is.
Thank you, Minnie. Hanif.
You know, a lot of things were said, and you know, one thing that I want to say about all of, you know, some things I want to say about all of this stuff that's said today is that, you know, we all can philosophically believe whatever we want to believe. But for the point that Minnie was trying to make, there has to be at some point in time something that we can stand unified with, something that we can come together with, because Like any other family, there's going to be disagreements, but we all have to learn how to agree to disagree with certain agreements so that we can focus on what's the most important thing here. You know, someone used to say to me a long time ago, you know, you got to make the main thing the main thing. And until we figure out until we identify and agree with what that main thing really is, we'll have a lot of philosophical conversations and we could agree with some things and disagree with other things. But no matter what the conversation is, no matter how researched we are, educated we are on these various things, it's our job to also take these things, make them digestible, make them easy for people to understand, and make them verifiable. Because you're never going to have people coming together about something that they can't grasp for themselves. If you only, because if you say that you can, then I disagree with that. You can get someone to be a drone and follow whatever you tell them to do if that's how they identify themselves, or if they believe whatever they're being told or whatever sounds good. But we've got to make these concepts identifiable, graspable, and reproducible, because we can't be everywhere, but knowledge can travel places that we can't. So we've got to do our part to make sure that everyone understands what these are, can verify these things for themselves, and then make their own decision. And if there's a decision is to agree with this, cool. If it's to disagree with it, cool. As long as we figure out what the main thing is for us moving forward and be about that main thing.
All right, thank you. Mark, closing thoughts.
I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, I think we all had some good points. I appreciate everybody's input. I think it was a great build. Great build. I think we all waking up in our own time, and everybody's coming to their realizations in their own time. Absolutely. You know, so it's just gonna keep coming. You know, and the revelations are gonna keep coming as to what we are. And those that are listening and paying attention are gonna be awake. They're gonna awaken further and more and faster. You know, so yeah. Definitely. I wouldn't tell nobody to take what I've said as literal. I tell everybody when we talk, don't believe anything I said. Don't believe a word of what I said. You shouldn't believe anyway, because to believe means to be lied to. So don't believe anybody blindly. You know what I mean? If it resonates with you, that's something different. But please go do all your own research. If you come to what I feel is what I said, then that's good too. But if you don't, it really don't matter. You know what I'm saying? Because either way, I'm still going to make money, whether the market goes up or down, because I'm in the Forex. You know, that's a market that we created. You know, that's something that we did. Just like the stock market we did the Forex, right? It's based on ancient trade lines. So if you want to make money, if you want to solve these issues that we have, you're going to have to return to what you is. You got to. You can't. You got to, at least in your mind, realize what you was to realize where you could go, the potentiality of what you have, because right now you can't harness your potentiality because it's stuffed inside this little tiny ball that they told you that you are. You know what I'm saying? So when you realize more of what you are, then you can go further too. So it's just going to be those that can dig it. If it resonate, it resonate. If it don't, and maybe it will. If it won't, it really, either way, it don't matter. I realize that I'm not here to force none on nobody or tell nobody exactly what's supposed to be. You know what I'm saying? These things just come into me, like when I all these books I got I got PDFs. I got so many PDFs. Like if y'all want a book list, like I'm not just talking out my ass on the show. If y'all want a book list, I got 70 books I could send you. I got 70 books I could send you if you want them. I got more. I got 140 books because for 15 years, I done been getting these books and different files and stuff sent to me and digging this stuff up when people would tell me, yo, what are you talking about? You're crazy. You know what you're talking about. But then I would meet people on that path. So that's why I say this is like a school. You got to leave out of yourself. Or everything you thought you knew, you got to lead out of it and then come back into yourself and not going to re-enter yourself as realizing what you really is and your capability and the realms that are within yourself. You see what I'm saying? Because to reconnect with yourself is to reconnect with what you always is. And that's everything. You're everything.
Okay. I like that little side. Here we go. Justin, you up. Thank you, Mark. Closing thoughts.
Hanif had said that we have to come with the commonality, and it's unfortunate that we have to be having common black, which was a term that we all just said is something we shouldn't be using because it was a social construct created in the 1600s. You know what I mean? It was a race. It's a race construct meant to divide. So I think we have to first understand that we have to do away with everything that the people that we would call our counterparts, our white counterparts, is giving us. All right. Miseducation of the Negro is a good book to read. So when you do that, then you're able to say, okay, let's create something ourselves. And I think Brown's the easy way to say that. We can go to government as a unified front and say, you know what, we're brown today. And you can't tell me anything else because we're unified, right? And that's how this so-called nation got built. It was unification through war as well, but it's unification. We have to unify and say, okay, we don't want to be called this. We're going to be called this now. Because once you know your ethnicity, especially it's another thing we talked about, you know how to do commerce, right? You know how to have a family. You know how to farm. You know agriculture. You understand these things. So once we get away from Black and we consider ourselves something more than that, right? Because we're less than when we call ourselves Black. When we consider ourselves more than that, I think we can start moving forward. But as long as we consider ourselves Black, I think we're putting ourselves and marginalize ourselves. We're putting ourselves right back in the position we were in.
Can I say one more thing though? I just want to add one more thing.
It's wrap up time, bro. I gotta wrap up. Justin,
I wanted to hear it.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say what Minnie said is for, and I was thinking, it's in the beginning there was 4 people, like it was 4 types of people, like there's 4 directions. You know what I'm saying? So you did have the red, the black, the yellow, I believe, and the white. You know what I mean? Because it was 4 different directions and it was 4 different people. But if people want to call themselves Black, that's cool too. I'm just saying don't identify with that at law. Like if you want to call yourself something, whatever you want to call yourself, just call it. I'm just saying when it comes to law, there's laws on the books that prevent those people from doing things, and that's not who you is. So don't claim that on the books. If you want to say you Black and that feels good to you, do that. I'm not telling you what to do. If you want to say you Black, say you Black. You know what I mean? I really am not doing that. If that's what you want to do, I'm just telling you what it means. But I'm saying on the books,
Okay,
we got to change that. So you got to change your status. You do have to change your status because status is what gives people jurisdiction over you. So you need to change your status. Yes, that's what I was telling you about changing your status. Even if it's Pacific Islander, you're not Pacific Islander, whatever.
Yeah, that's a long second, Mark. That's a long second, bro.
It's good. It's good information, and we appreciate the information. Here we go. All right, I want to thank everybody who have been with us for the last 2 hours. I hope everybody got something out of it. 2 things I got out of it. One, start where you are. I appreciate Mark for saying that. I think we have to go back to who we are, and I think folks have to figure that out for themselves. Number of books you can do to read that on Chinua Achebe. Things Fall Apart, The Black Holocaust for Beginners by S.E. Anderson. Naeem Akbar's Chains and Images of Psychological Slavery. A Kill from Niggas to Gods. Cheek Aqua, A Treasure Within. Malafi Asante, Classical Africa. There's so many dope books that people could read. I highly recommend anything by John Henry Clark, Africans in the Crossroads. For those who work within the corporate structure, Sam Greenlee's The Spook Who Sat by the Door. There's so many dope books. Asa Hilliard, anything by Asa Hilliard, make sure you get out there and read. They're books, not Facebook statuses, not Twitter tweets or whatever you want to call them, but actual books. And people need to read those books. Get back into your books. The second thing is something that Minnie said. We can get into the semantics of the English language, but again, we're still using the colonizers' language to define ourselves, no matter how we put it. Black, brown, if we're using English, we're still using their language to define us. So I think we have to learn to speak another language, whether it's an ancestral language or if it's something we create. That way we can define ourselves for ourselves using language that we that we created and understand. People need to get it just to that. I don't give 2 shits about the English language. Our people were brought here by, in chains. Don't want to stick to that, but this language is not mine. My last name is Marks. It's a slave tag. It's a slave name. So there's a lot of things that we need to get rid of, but I'm with Minnie on the whole, we need our own language. Other than that, I strongly encourage people, research for yourself, read, study, whatever you decide to call yourself, make sure you're doing it in the best interest of your people. With that, I'm going to say much love, much peace, much respect. This is the last On Deck for the year 2020. We'll be back in 2021. And if you have suggestions for topics, be sure to hit us up. All right, y'all. And we are done, and we're out of here. Peace.
God's walked in.
Rejoice!